I have to reclaim my hostship. I have to like click a button and reclaim that I am the host.
So territorial.
Oh my God. Yeah, so many protocols. All right. So let me see. I'm going to go ahead to your email, Jen. Oh,
Okay.
there's the tops of my paint. That's helpful. So what I know about air bubbles is sometimes I used to think that it was the paper type that I was using. But I think it is more, like you said, about the temperature of the wax. Or, so air, I think. Oh, wait, you don't come up under that. Wait, hold on. Okay, so two things. One, Jen watched she said she really liked this podcast. If you guys could see the email, it's from Lisa Caros. What did the podcast say? What did you learn?
So I think the name of the podcast is the Savvy Painter, which I've never listened to before, but I was just,
Oh, yeah.
I just, have you listened to her?
Yes, I have. It's good.
Yeah. So she interviewed Lisa Caros. Yeah, and she's an encaustic artist, so that was really interesting. And she talked about her process and some of the projects she's worked on. So it's a good one. I thought it was good to listen to.
Was it the most recent one?
It must have been because well, I don't know, because I searched for encaustic art and it came up at the top of the list. So I didn't check the date.
Okay. I'll have to look for it.
The Savvy Painter. Okay, that sounds cool. And I've been watching, actually I'm teaching a class on jelly plate printing right now. So I've actually just been watching a bunch of jelly plate printing, which is kind of a fun, super fun medium.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to try the photo transfers because I've been trying to figure out a way to get some imagery on the surface of the wax without having to use paper.
Cool.
So I've been interested in learning photo silk screening and different photographic silk screening ideas. So I'm hoping that, but it's still like you have to use like magazines, but it's fine. I don't need to have my pictures on the surface. I just would like to have some representational imagery on the surface of the wax.
Yeah.
So, and since I'm not a drawer, photography is going to be like the way I go. So anyway, all right. So, but that's been fun. I'll definitely check out this podcast. Thanks for sharing that. So those are the little air bubbles. And honestly, like, they're like not that, they're not that bad. The thing about them that you can fill them, right? So you can take a little bit of the warm wax and literally like put little drops of in there, and you could like fill them as if you're filling like spackling a hole, right?
Right.
But what happens is that it actually does, it's weird. They turn a different color, which seems crazy. Like, why would the wax from like the same pot, like just a couple minutes later, turn like a different color? But it does. And then you just see them, but at least they'd be level. If it's about being like level, you can definitely like fill those holes, right?
Okay.
If you use the heat gun, you can also fill the holes or make the holes go away, right? By melting the wax and having them kind of close up, and you'll actually see the bubble when you put the heat gun on. So you'll literally like heat it up, the wax will liquefy, and you'll see the air bubble pop. So you can try that too, right? But then you don't have, whatever texture that you had, because once you melt the wax, you have that texture, right? You have that puddle, or that's right. You have that smooth looking. And then if you have colors in there, I don't love the heat gun look. Like, I just don't love it, because if there's colors in there and they're like swirly, that's just too Venetian paper looking. Like, I just don't like that look. I just get like reference, you know, I feel like I'm getting a technique that I don't want in my work, right? So my go-to on those air bubbles would be to fill them like wood spackle.
Okay.
If I don't actually want them there.
I was torching them, but then I think then that's like too much of a good thing. Like, it just then I was moving the wax around too much.
Huh. I think torching them.
I think I had better luck with the torch versus the heat gun, because it would pretty much take care of them. But then I'm still learning like how much is enough, you know, just like that little lick of heat versus like, oh, now you're pushing the wax to the corner.
Right. Well, that's why I don't like the heat gun, because it has that fan in it.
Yeah.
You know what? The fan blows the wax around and makes it more swirly, like ripply, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't like that. That's why I don't like the heat gun. Only for like further, like very light heat gunning do I use the heat gun, right? Because, and I don't like the swirl, because once it gets wet, once it turns to like liquid, and then it just like makes it a wave, you know, like kind of like a magic bubble. Do you remember those magic bubbles we used to make with the tube and you blow it out? Did you guys do that?
Yeah.
Magic? That's kind of what it reminds me of. All right. So, and like here too. So one of the things that I like to do is I like to work with wax. And this is an interesting conversation. So I actually like to work with wax that's at a medium status. So that means in between hot and cold. So it's like flexible. And the reason that I got very familiar with this medium temperature was because when I was pouring, I would get runoff, and then I would, as soon as it set, it would still be warm, but it would be set. So I could pick up the piece, and what I would do is I would sculpt around the outside edges, meaning scraping off the excess, and then I would take some of that very soft, very pliable wax and maybe fill in an air bubble, right? Or add a textured layer with that. So it's a little bit more like using sculpture as a technique than painting, right? So when it's totally liquid, that's more what we're used to calling painting. And then there is a, you know, an in-between that's a little bit more sculptural.
Okay.
And then I would take a palette knife and I would fill those holes, let them cool, and then scrape them with a razor blade. And you might see a slight color tonal difference, but you definitely won't see the holes like as they are there.
Okay.
Okay. This, and then Jen asked do you see this texture here?
Yeah.
So that to me is almost like a herringbone texture, because it's like the, you know, it's like this, you know, it's like arrow, line, you know, line like this, right? I'll show you guys, right? I'll show you guys up close. So you could do this very easily with the tip of a razor blade. You can hashtag, right? Back and forth. You can also do it if you just continually brushed with a brush. So there's actually like 3 ways that you could do this texture. I actually kind of like it. I like it. And then this is Jen's. Yeah, I do too. We can talk about that. And then this is Jen's piece, which I really love it. And I think what I'm seeing is that it seems to me like the right is like a wide shot of this place, and then the left is like a close-up shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got these images from some books in my classroom. I was kind of going through
cool
cabinets that just old, like teachers that have been there before me. I have a hard time getting rid of that stuff. So it's like cathartic to get rid of it, because it's like me claiming this space and like, I can do it. I can do it on my own. I don't need to go back to their stuff.
Right.
It's been fun to go through their books. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I know what you mean. Like old teachers that have taught there before you.
Yeah.
That's so cool. That is an amazing photograph. It's really, and I really like the juxtaposition of like the wide shot, and then you could tell it's like the detail of that scene, but in the close-up. It's so cool. So, you know, like when I see things like this, I want to say like use your incising techniques where you're like going over like the panel on the left and tracing that pattern.
Okay.
Like into the wax, right?
All right, yeah.
And then like also with the arches, like I would be using incising to draw into the arches, like to trace those shapes.
Okay.
So, and I think too, when you're learning a medium like encaustic, you're kind of like, you know, trying to balance, you know, on a skateboard, but also like move forward on the skateboard. Like you're like balancing, but then you're like, wait, I want to move. So you just like don't know exactly what to do next.
Right.
But you just got to kind of like learn your skills, and then they'll sort of start to like come up at the right time, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think what I was interested in that texture above is like, then there's that white that kind of sits on top of the texture. And I feel like, could you dry brush that so that it sits on top of your texture and doesn't grow in the grooves? Or how do you know what I mean?
Yeah, on the left or on the right?
Oh, I'm talking about that texture on the wood. I was thinking,
yeah.
When you want the highlight of the paint to be on the top of the texture versus down into the grooves.
Yes, if you make, let's talk about that. So that's like, do you guys understand what she's talking? She's talking about like high or low, right? High or low paint. So it's basically like on it or in it, right?
Right.
Okay. So that's a good thing to bring up. We can talk about that. And we can talk about the air bubbles some more if you guys want. I'm just waiting for these wax to melt a little bit more. Was that it on your questions? Hopefully that was helpful. I like your little tins of colors, your yellow. What do you have? Yellow, blue, and
I've been trying to just save the scraps when I can.
I
don't know, because I find that they're fun to like use later. I haven't really I don't really have a lot of mud like you do yet, but maybe I just don't know how to make enough. I don't know.
Well, I actually found a video about, I've actually found a good video I actually wanted to send. I couldn't figure out how to send it though, but it was the one on mixing paint. And one of the things that the guy said was that if you use the tins for the encaustic, that you should totally bust out and try to use your palette for mixing paint. And it's like, I always feel kind of like, oh, I always apologize. Like, oh, sorry, I don't use tins. But now I'm like, oh, yay. He's like telling everybody to be more like me, you know, like mix.
I like your method, and I do that. The only time I use the tins is when I'm like scraping back, and I don't want to throw it all away. So if it's clean,
no, I love it. And look at the colors that you made. I mean, if you made those 3 colors from your scraping backs, that's really cool. And you totally should keep that paint. I love what you're doing. You're kind of just dividing it up. Like I scraped a light area, I scraped a medium. Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome. All right, so I'm gonna take anything else from your email that did I get it all? Okay, that was really good though. And I like the way you took a picture and sent me a question. That was also very helpful. Okay, so I'm gonna show you guys what I'm talking about. How about I show you how to fill the air holes? How's that?
Sounds good.
Okay. So if I know that I might want to sculpt, I'm going to use my cookie tray, right? And hold on, let me just, does everybody have my tabletop as their primary?
Yes.
Now I do, yep.
Okay, so you should be able to see my palette and the tray, my brushes. Okay, so if I want to sculpt, I'm going to maybe use the cookie tray. Because, and this one's really dirty. So I think I talked about the cookie tray. The point of the cookie tray is being like helping you keep your area clean. But this cookie tray is not doing that for me right now, right? So I'm gonna have to just take a minute. So everything I wanted the cookie tray to be good for, it's not, it's terrible. So hang on one second. I have another one. Maybe this one's better. So keeping a clean space in your studio, you know, is kind of important. I actually was making a joke earlier about scanning artwork, and I scanned a wax photo that I had for a client, and I could not even believe how much dirt, like when you get up close, right? And you're like looking like down at your, you know, through the scanner at your wax piece, you're like, oh my God, there's a hair, there's a dirt, there's a, you know, like what is all that stuff? So like, there's a lot in your studio, there's a lot in the world, in the air that's going to end up in the painting, right? I mean, it can't be perfect. And especially the wax is going to want to like keep every little thing with it, right? So unless you have a super lab, like a science lab type studio, you're going to end up having some stuff in your wax, right? So anyway, it was kind of funny.
When you photograph your work, how do you do that? Because the wax does have like a sheen to it.
So I worked as a copy stand photographer for years and years, way back in the day in San Francisco. But you really need two, if you light it, you have to have two equal lights, 45 degrees from the artwork on both sides. So you can Google, like, it's like this. It's like you literally have the artwork and then you have two lights.
Yep. Okay.
45 degrees on both sides. So they have to be 100% equal to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to be about, you know, like a distance away from the artwork.
Okay.
And we used to do it on the floor. So the piece of artwork would be on the floor. The copy stand lights would be 45 degrees on both sides, and you would be standing perpendicularly over top of the artwork.
Okay.
Wow.
But if you do it on the wall, then you have to do it like this. You have to do it on the wall, and you have to have your lights 45-degree angles on each side, and you have to be standing dead center perpendicular to the piece.
Okay.
And everything has to be flat and leveled and angled right. And softbox lights, they can't be bulb light or have any glare to them. They have to be totally enclosed softbox lights. Now, the other way that you can photograph your work is in full shade inside with an iPhone on the ground. So that is also workable. And those are the only two situations that I know. The other way is, of course, paying anywhere from $50 to $150 to get it scanned, like large scale scanning, but that's very hard to find these days and very expensive. But like if you're making a monograph or a book or something, you pretty much have to have every single piece scanned. I mean, I would think to make it look good.
Right.
Really good, because wax is so dimensional. It's all, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's really hard. You know, it's hard to photograph.
I think you know the answer to that.
I do, and scanning is the best. Okay. So it kind of goes back in a weird way to that little story I was telling you about making smaller pieces. So what I usually do is I would make, you know, if I love a photograph, I'll make it a couple times smaller. And then I get to scan the small pieces because I have a 9x12 scanner. You know, that's a fairly affordable piece of equipment. Mm-hmm. And sometimes even for the catalog or the postcard, I won't even actually use the original work that goes in the gallery. I'll use the original scan that was smaller. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the piece in the gallery might be photographed or put in a catalog, but the piece like maybe on, I don't know. Sometimes I go back and forth. If I feel like they're compatible enough, I might just use the original scan. Like I did that this last year. It seems like it's worked out okay. I haven't gotten in trouble for it yet, but they're different. The small version and the big version are different, but they look enough the same that the scan has been fine. But anyway, yeah, it's challenging and costly. I mean, to really get the depth, like the wax is so dimensional. You know, it's so, like there's so many layers. It's really hard to photograph. But you can try figure out the best, you know, the best that you can do, right?
Right.
Or outsource some professionals in the area. Some people have these really fancy 4x5 scan backs, which are pretty cool, but very expensive. So they're for scanning like paintings. And then they just charge a lot to do it. Okay, so I'm gonna try heating this guy up a little bit before I wax to see if I get any air bubbles. And it's pretty cold in my studio. No, I'm just saying for the wax. My husband's mad because I've been complaining. Thank you, I love you, thank you, I love you, thank you, I love you. You always have to say thank you, I love you after you're mean, right? Thank you, I love you. Okay. All right. So here I go. Take the doggy. Yes, she doesn't like it out here. Okay. So I'm going to heat up the piece. And the reason that I do it in the tray is if I do have air bubbles, I can use the wax that comes off of here. And it's fairly clean. I mean, it's clean enough for me right now, this tray. All right. So I'm
Leah, do you ever have bristles come out?
Yeah, I just pulled. Yeah, did you just see me? I just pulled a bunch of bristles out.
Yeah. Do you ever have it though where it's actually like as you pull the wax, it comes off into
Yeah, it's terrible.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah, you just have to pull it out of the wax. Or you know what? So this is actually interesting. This is a hake brush, but do you see how much shorter the bristles are than this one?
Yeah.
These are better. They're more expensive. They're better brushes. They're so tighter. The longer the bristle, like, and you can like, I can see all the bristles that are about to come off. Like this, look, I mean, this brush is a piece of shit. You know, like I can pull them all out, right? So you're either gonna pull them out yourself or they're gonna get pulled out in your work. I mean, maybe you don't care, but if you care, just sit there and pull them out before you start painting or buy more expensive brushes. So I'm going to use this nice expensive brush and it has like the blue on it. It's just like, it's like $5 or $6, maybe $10 more. I don't remember. All right. So I preheated that. I'm going to try to go. I'm just going to brush straight down. I'm not getting any air bubbles. Zero air bubbles. And I can just go ahead and keep going. So I'm going to go sideways. I'm trying to 0 air bubbles.
Nice. Well done.
Okay, but say I wanted to, here's what I'm talking about with that sculpture. So here, I just took the wax. I put it in the cookie tray, right? And you see how it's starting to whiten or cool?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I have my palette knife. So this is right when it gets to like right this point, I can pick it up. Right now it's sculptural, do you see? So then I can, then you could paint like this, right? With the palette knife, so it's pretty beautiful. You see what I'm doing?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like icing a cake. It's the perfect temperature. It's in between hot and cold. And it's like, I could just like layer, it's a nice background texture, right?
Yeah.
So it looks gorgeous. It looks like there's this Japanese, like, right? Do you see it?
Yeah.
And then you could just like, I mean, it's gorgeous, right? I mean, you can put that all over, you can leave it, it'll harden if you just leave it. Now, if I wanted to smooth it, I probably wouldn't fuse it, even though it's 2 layers of wax medium. If I fuse it, I'd get rid of all the texture. But if I wanted to like kind of do an in-between, I could just like put it on there and not fuse it. Wait for it to cool, right? Wait for it to cool. And then I could just like gently scrape it with a, gently scrape it with a razor blade. Right? Now, this is what I think you're talking about. So do you see the tip of this razor blade? If I go, I can just go like I'm trying to do a straight line. It's not letting me. I could just nick it, right? I could just nick this in a hashtag, you know?
Right.
And I think it's a little bit easier if it's like a little bit, I could, this to me is that texture that you showed me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you could just do this, and you could do like layers of this. So like you could just do this. I mean, it's kind of cool too when you just go long, like this is beautiful when it just goes long, you know? And it's nice too because you do have like a little bit of like an entry spot where you're entering, you know, where you're entering.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then what I could do with this is, you know, you could razor blade it down a little bit so it's not quite as rough.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you wanted a little, you can also just kind of hit it with your finger. Now I can do two things. I can either add a layer of encaustic paint now, or I can add a pigment stick. So the pigment stick, depending on how you use it, will either sit on top, and I think this is what you were trying to ask me, or go inside, right? So it's really up to you. The pigment stick will do either. It's just kind of up to you how you use the pigment stick. So I'm just going to use a dark color. I think this is dark blue, which is fine. This is like dark blue. And this looks like it might be gray. So I can make like a blue gray. So if I just take the pigment stick on my finger and I just lightly touch the wax, what do you think? I'm just going to hit what?
The texture, the top, right?
The top, right? So I'm just kind of like, literally like like hovering, right? I'm just hovering over. I'm only hitting the very top. So really, in essence, the pigment stick kind of wants to kind of just stay on in the safety zone. You know, it's like fine. It's totally happy and chill, just hanging out, you know, on the top, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually more work for me, and I have to work harder with the pigment stick to get it to bend and flow into the pattern, right? The pigment stick is perfectly happy just sitting on the top. So this is what it looks like when it just sits on the top, right? So I can see that crisscrossy pattern, right? And I can see the wax like layer, you know, paleting things I did, but I'm not like dictated by them, right? I'm just kind of skimming over them, and they're light inside, right? I'm trying to figure out, right? Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
But can you see that all the marks I made?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So do you want me to, now you want me to do inside the marks?
Well, is that when you use the blending medium?
Yeah. Yeah. Or you just work harder. You just work harder. Hold on. The blending medium is probably the easiest way, because honestly, like, why do I want to use up half a pigment stick, you know, just to show off a pattern on a small, you know, like that's expensive, right? So let's say I take this little bit of paint I have here, right? I'm taking this little bit of paint I have here on my table. This is my extender stick, and I'm gonna add this right into the middle of the paint. Okay. And then I'm going to go back to the piece, and I'm going to just push harder push harder into the pattern with the pigment stick. Right? And I'm using a lot more force with my finger, right? I mean, you're going to run out of paint on the table, right? I mean, I'm not going to be able to, right? But I mean, I'm going to be able to do like half of this. You know, I'm kind of like really scraping the bottom of the barrel there, right? Okay. So then I cover the whole thing like that. And then I'm going to grab a paper towel. And you could go over, like, seriously, you could go over the whole painting, right? This is where you have to really kind of like let go of whatever you thought this was going to be and just like paint it. Like, you know, get over it, like just do it, right? So you're just going to cover the whole thing. Just be like, F it, I'm covering the whole thing. Like, I don't know, right? You're not taking it, you're not being cautious anymore, right? You're just, okay. I mean, even cover her face, like goodbye, right? Okay, so now you're like, oh, whoops. However, this is sort of where, you know, a newfound beauty happens, right? Where you start, and then you can start to like reveal. You could also use a razor blade, right? So you could do this technique with a razor blade or with a paper towel. Let's see what happens if I do. I'm going to just clean this razor blade real quick. So now the dark ink is inside those little lines. I can't tell where it's good. Is that good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
Yeah.
So that's really beautiful. And I actually love those little lines. I'm really actually glad you brought that up. They're beautiful. Right? So that's just the end of a razor blade. Now, you could do that same hashtaggy, slashy technique with another tool, right? If the end of the tool is wider, the lines are just going to be wider, right? I think the razor blade makes a nice straight line, though. I think another tool might not be as straight. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so here I go, like wiping this away, right? And I can use my paper towel. I can wipe, you know, to a point. And then at a certain point, the paper towel is just going to be doing all it can do to get rid of that bluish gray. So then I have to just switch to a different tool. Okay, so one of the tools I can switch to is the razor blade, or I could actually grab a little bit of turpenoid or turpentine or a little bit of just blending medium to try to, like, you know, get a little bit more paint off. Right? Okay, and then if I really want to go back to brighter white, then I have to bring in the razor blade, right? Because what's happening is all that pigment stick is just sitting on the surface of the wax. So if I just scrape back that surface, I can bring back more of that original color, right? And also I might get some other interesting patterns like I just did here. See how I just evoked this other interesting pattern here? Just through adding and subtracting. And this is what I love about the wax, is when it kind of like talks back to me and gives me something like this that's beautiful, which is sort of just like another little shapy thing with texture, right? And that's when I get excited about it. And like I've said before, most of my happy times come in the razor blade scraping back. Right? So it's like adding, and then, oh, scrape back a little. And then that's where the magic happens for me. Right? But I really like this texture here. And if I wanted it to be lighter on the top, look, I'm just going to go in and I'm not going to completely get rid of the line, but I can just blend the line or lighten the line a little bit just by taking down this top a little bit, right? Okay. So then the next thing I might do to this piece is go, oh, okay, so now I have a nice background color. So I worked on the background. So what I need to do is reestablish the foreground. right? So how I would reestablish the foreground would be to add some light paint, right, into the highlights. So I think I just read this the other day too, but usually the rule is like three colors are good. Like that's enough. 3 colors is enough, like in a painting, right? So this one has almost 4, but technically I could say that it has blue, gray, white, and like an orangey, you know, orange. You could just say it's orange, and then it could be like light orange and dark orange, right? So technically it has like 3 colors in it. And I do think in a way that that's like enough colors for a painting, especially with encaustic. And until you just get better at it, I think that 3 colors is a good working combo, you know, that's going to be successful for you. And I get a little careful now too, because I love to use my fingerprint so much, but now I like to see my fingerprint in all my work. I'm like, oh, there's my fingerprint. I like, oh, so I'm trying to use like a brush. I'm just trying not to always have my fingerprint. I'm trying to use a brush or something else to like kind of blend. And then you can kind of just go back and forth between lights and darks until it looks good, right? And I could add a little accent color, you know, like a little yellow. And you can add it with a brush. You can add it with the actual stick itself, right? There's kind of, and then I often put it on and then blend it in. Okay. So is that helpful? Now I didn't really get up. Let me see if I don't heat the panel up, if I get an air bubble. Okay, Jen?
Sure, you don't have to ruin your piece for me.
No, I'm not going to ruin this one. I like this one. I'm not going to touch that one. I love that one. I love the cold bluey gray and the yellow. It's so pretty. No, I have another one. I'm going to not heat it up with the heat gun. Now, again, like, I don't want you to be overheating your wax, but like my palette is up because it's so cold. My palette is up to like 2 something. So I'm gonna go down. All right, so let's see if that. And I'm using this. Okay, what kind of brush did you use, Jen?
Well, I did get a new hockey brush that was like 4 inches wide, which felt huge to me. And yeah. I didn't know if it was because it wasn't really broken in yet. I just wanted to try it. And I had some cold wax in the corner like you do, so I thought maybe that was the issue. So it was this guy.
What do you mean cold wax in the corner?
Oh, see how your medium's not all melted?
Oh, yeah.
I thought maybe that was my issue.
I think that just happens because these stupid the beads just clump together. I could break that up, but I'm just not bothered with it. Well, all right, so wait, was it this kind of brush or more like this kind of brush?
It's a hockey brush. It's a 4-inch.
All right. So technically, like, you should be having such a
much with this one, with the 2-inch brush, than I did with the 4-inch brush. But I don't know if it's because one was newer than the other.
No, that shouldn't have anything to do it. All right, so I'm gonna tap it out. Let me see if I get air bubbles. I'm just not getting air bubbles. I mean, I have gotten them, but I'm not getting them. Oh, I kind of got one. And I'm getting like tiny little ones down here, actually. So I'm kind of getting like tiny little ones because I didn't heat the heat gun up. You know, I didn't heat the panel up. So I'm getting like tiny, tiny little ones.
Okay. That's kind of what I was getting too.
Okay. So I think that I would do, maybe even just do another coat of wax over them. Let's see. But then it gets thicker, right? The wax gets thicker. And most of the air bubbles went away. I got this glob though, which I don't like. So I can get rid of the globby thing. So I'm just using my palette knife, right? I'm just kind of scraping this down. And again, like when you're doing work like this, you know, this is your first layer. you know, if you want it to be thinner someplace, you can do that now. You know, if you want it to be thicker, you can do that now. Usually I always do this first coat of wax medium before I start, and then I start, you know. And sometimes I just do the wax medium. Like these are colored pieces. I don't know that I would actually like add that much encaustic paint to them. But if I did, it would be to create this like more surface layer. But I see how I'm reusing the paint, the wax here in that sculptural way. I actually really enjoy that. I just like kind of like scraping it and putting it back in the painting, right? Like that. Did you see that? It kind of gives me, again, like that grungy feeling where it's just not too perfect, but it's like, it's nice. It's on there. It's kind of smooth and yes, kind of textured. And then I just rub it with my finger. Okay, so let's just wait and see how this one cools. Now, I know that because I put that coat on and then I put that other coat on, like my photo realism is kind of at a loss here. So what I might do, not with this tool because it's not the right shape, but maybe like with this tool, which is round and matches the shape of my subject, I might just dig out her body line, right? Just a little bit, right? Do you see just a little bit right there? And not to be like overly literal or too loud, but just to kind of like just lighten that spot a little bit and bring some of that photo detail back and just give you a glimpse of that texture that I actually have in the photo. I could do it a little bit here too, just like with her hand, right? Where I'm just thinning the wax ever so slightly along the line of my photograph to give my photograph that little bit of extra sharpness, right? To kind of pop out through the wax. So it's not like, I don't want it to be super obvious to the viewer that they're able to see a little bit more sharpness there. Does that make sense? And then I can just kind of blend it with my finger. Now, if I've gone too far and that line looks too deep, I could do one of two things. I could use a little bit of wax and put a little bit of wax back on there, right? But then that kind of like defeats the purpose. But sometimes you just go too deep when you, so then, okay, so that was too much. But I bet now when I scrape this way, it's funny too with the wax. I find that if you go at it too much in one direction, you cause yourself a problem. So it's almost like you kind of have to like go over it in another direction and then blend those two layers back together for it to look like natural. Does that make sense? So it's like the first thing you do is almost too deep. So then if you add just a little bit like a healing wand over it, a little bit of wax over it, and then in another direction and then blend those two layers, usually that's good, right? Then it looks like kind of in between. It's hard to just do that little bit that you need. All right. So this looks pretty nice. I'm gonna put this one over here on the side for a second. And let's work on this piece. So let's go back to kind of where we were last week. Do you guys have any questions? Hopefully that was helpful. Was that helpful? I think that sculpting bit was interesting. Was that interesting?
Yes.
Yeah, I want to try it.
Yeah, I love that because like, you know, we spend so much time with the wax, either hard or soft. So what about that in-between world, right? And so the best way that I found to get that is just, you know, have a cookie tray or, you know, and then just put a little bit of wax in the cookie tray like this, right? And let it cool, right? And so like on this piece, like where, oh, this is funny. I think this one is totally, I can't decide which way this one, oh, it goes like this. Okay. So where would this be interesting? Like, you sort of have
I really love it. What is on there, Leah?
This is the one we did last week. I kept
this.
Is it? Yeah, I kept this for you guys.
So student.
So I could make like something here. I mean, I could just be like, and again, like, you could just add it wherever. I mean, look how cool that looks though. And of course I could even be doing this with a color, but it's just like another technique, right? Rather than always having to brush it, like what else can you do with it, right? And trust me, you guys, this only comes from like doing this every day. Do I think, you know, like, oh, what else? You know what I mean? But you guys get like sort of the benefit of that mentality of like, oh, right? And some people, there are artists, I'm sure you can find them on YouTube that paint with their palette knives, like paint with oil paint with their palette knives, right? So it is like a legit tool here. And so now we're just kind of like sculpting. And I just used
Do you find that you do that more on like the lower layers or the base layers, or both on top and?
No, only on top. Only on top. I would never do it as a base layer.
Okay.
Only if I was healing a whole. No, because then if you did it on the base layer, you'd end up covering it up too much.
Oh, yeah. Right. Okay.
Right. So what I did last week was remember this was photo and this was white space, right? And this was the photo. And then I did the wax medium, and then I did the dark layer over, right? So I think what I was going to show tonight was what would happen. So this is all just encaustic. I haven't done any pigment sticks, but I wanted to kind of show that formula of like photo. This was all empty space, right? This was that. Do you remember if you look back on the video, this was these three colors together. Oh, sorry, I have to get rid of that. This is these three colors together. So I'm pretty excited too about these three colors together, because honestly, I don't know why, but I have a lot of this horrible color. Like, no, I'm serious. This is a problem. I have a lot of this color in my studio, and I'm like, why is this here? I don't remember ever buying it. Like,
how did you decide what colors to buy? I mean, it took me forever looking at all those different colors.
I know, it's really hard. Hold on, I have to turn this heat off for a second. Hold on 1 second.
It seems like no matter which colors I get, then there's something else I want that I didn't get.
Well, you know, at this point, I feel like I'm going to mix all those colors together. So, but there's probably 50% of those paints that I would just like never buy. And this is probably one of the colors I would never buy. However, mixed with these two other colors, which I think this is like Payne's Gray and Red Brown, this is beautiful. So there's a really funny quote about paint color, and it says that every color is beautiful depending who it's sitting next to. So I truly believe that. I believe that every color is beautiful if it's sitting next to the right color. So like in this particular situation, like these three colors together are beautiful, right? But then I could just use this color as an accent color, and I think it would be beautiful in this situation. And then there's like a little bit of white, right? So just like that color and a little bit of white or off-white would be really beautiful. You know?
In the white that you like the best?
No, but in the beginning, I think you just have to buy, I mean, unless you have like, you know, a couple $1,000s you want to spend on paint, which I would never tell anybody not to do. You know, if you have it, do it. I mean, I wish I could do it, but buy, you know, 2 or 3 colors at a time, you know? So that's a beautiful color. I mean, and really, like, I hate to say it, but I do, at the end of the day, really do think every color is beautiful. So, you know, it just depends how you use it, what you mix it with. All right, so let's talk about what would you guys do with this paint now? So this is encaustic paint in a light tone of the colors that are underneath. I feel like this painting needs more dimension and maybe a little bit more detail. I'm not quite sure. So, but I'm going to just start painting it. So I might, I would start, I'm probably going to start from the left and just start adding this light color over top of this dark color, right? I could also add it as a stencil which I think I need. I need more floral. I need more botanical. I need like more action, right? So it's kind of like, do I want dead space or action? And I feel like I need both. Like I feel like this needs to go quieter, but I need some more floral action, right? So let me think. So I can start moving the stencil around to sort of feel, I think I like it kind of here, going up this way. And I can flip it over too to see if it makes more sense going that way. For some reason, it makes more sense going that way. So let me just see what it looks like with a couple of these on here. So I kind of I have this beautiful color. I don't know what even, I don't even know. This is like really like this soupy peat green down here. So a lot of times when I'm painting with the encaustic paint, I don't worry too crazy much about highlights and shadows, right? Or the actual color. It's almost like an undercolor. That looks kind of interesting. It's a little bit darker than what I thought it was going to be. And now I'm just going to paint. I'm just going to paint some layers. And also look, I can go into my sort of soup down there and just use this as like almost like a blending, right? So I'm going like right over, I'm going to go like right over everything, which might seem kind of crazy. But again, I've told you guys before, right? Where does the beauty sort of happen for me?
When you use your razor blade and scrape
yeah,
back.
when I go back to sort of digging out my photo, it's kind of like it's almost like I have a bad habit of like getting in trouble or something, and I want somebody to come like bail me out all the time, right? But this is what I start to find interesting is sort of when this light and dark kind of intersect, and whatever spaces sort of happen here is what I find very beautiful, you know? And I think it was good that I added some of this underneath here. So it kind of and I sort of feel like I see a rhythm, you know, like a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 of this. And I like the I like the white coming through, and I like the dark coming through. All right, so let's fuse that. If I wanted to go a little bit later in one area, I could try. So again, like I'm still pretty far from like knowing. Oh, and okay, so I made that drip. So I could do like, that could be cool. I could do a couple more. Somebody, oh, was that you, Jen, that said is splattering bad? That was
I
so
didn't know
cute.
if it looked amateurish or not.
It's so cute. No, I like it. So it's gonna be like that's kind of cool right there with that flower. No, I like it. I love dots.
I like it too. I just didn't know if somebody who had more experience would be like, what the hell is that?
I don't think so. I mean, I think if it works, I think it's like anything else. Like if you can get away, if it works in the right context at the right place, then by all means. So this helps a little bit. Do you see how I just added some white there?
Mm-hmm.
That just gave it like a little bit more, made a little bit more sense to just those two tones. So it was good to highlight it a little bit. All right, so let's see what happens when I fuse it. And I always know too that no matter what I do with the wax, I'm gonna like pull the painting together with the pigment sticks. Right? So this is still just like sort of like just underpainting for me, where I'm just kind of setting the tone in terms of lights and darks, like layers, right? And honestly, Jen, I'm seeing some like air bubbles now here. Like over here, I see a couple air bubbles, but like it just feels like they're fine. They're organic. They're like, you know, they're right. It's fine. Now, I honestly have to say that this kind of looks like a lot of encaustic art that I see on the internet right now. Do you guys feel that way?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? This is like what I feel like I see on the internet all the time, like this type of painting. Mm-hmm. That like just the way it is right now.
Did you lose any of your stencil? Maybe my torch is too hot, because I had some like stencils that I was putting on there, and then when I was fusing it with the torch, some of it would blow out a little bit.
Get too wide?
But just like I would lose the shape a little bit, like I'd melt it too much, and then I would lose like an edge of the stencil.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel like, well, I covered the stencil up a little bit with this wax brush. So, but I feel like it's still under there. I mean, I don't know how much I like want the stencils to really stay intact.
Right.
Like I kind of want them to blend a lot. So I'm kind of looking for them to sort of fall apart. I'm like actually hoping they fall apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because otherwise it just turns into like too commercial. Like the artwork isn't as it's just not as artsy for me.
Right.
And I hate to say that too, but like, you know, the more you do something, you know, you just like, I don't want it to look like home decor. I want it to look like fine art.
Right.
So I kind of want that stencil to break down. But if you don't want that stencil to break down, then yes, fuse further away and probably don't cover up with a layer of wax. All right, so I'm going to say that this is like cool enough for me to start razor blading around. So what I need to think about is where I want the photo to come back. You know, and like right now, it just doesn't even look like there is a photo under here, which I think is partially successful, but like, this is not where I want to leave this, right? Mm-hmm. So I could start, you know, here where I know there's a flower. And again, it's sort of about, now if you guys haven't done this, this is something I strongly suggest that you do, is go into Photoshop in Adobe and make a double exposure, right? So what happens is you just take two files, you know, you could take a picture of something and then a picture of like a detail or a graffiti wall, right? Or like a textured rock, right? And lay them on top of each other in Photoshop. And then on the right of the screen, you'll just see an opacity level. And you could just hit the opacity level like all the way to 100 and then all the way to 0. And then somewhere in the middle, around 25 or 30 or 40, you're going to find a place where those two pictures merge together beautifully. Okay? So that's like exactly what we're doing right now is I just basically put, you know, an entire layer or two of paint and brushstrokes over a photograph, right? And so I'm using the razor blade to blend the opacity of these layers back in a relationship, well, with each other, but really with the what? The photograph, right? So I'm just going to kind of scrape gently around and sort of just start to see what I see. And I'm just looking for beauty because I know that it's under there, right? Because I picked that photograph and I know that the photograph was beautiful when I started, right? So I'm just kind of like want this new reality and the old reality to be more beautiful together, right? So here comes my here comes my stencil.
Will you move your painting up a little?
Yeah. Here comes my stencil. Do you see where the stencil's coming through?
Yeah.
Like all in here. So I covered it, but now it's coming back and it's really nice the way it comes back because it comes back embedded in the wax. It's sort of flat. So it looks textured, but it's flat. And honestly, like this color, this is like such an, feels so Irish. It's like mossy, it's like mossy green, right? So this is pretty. I like that. I like this poo-poo brown as a mixing color. My God. It was like the curse. I was like, why do I have all, and I literally realized that it was probably because I was buying it, but just like never using it. So I just like but maybe I kept buying it, but I don't know. It was bizarre. I was like, how did this happen? So at any point though, you know, you could be like, oh, I like it, right? So this is really like personal. It's like, you know, personal preference. Like, you know, you don't have to go all the way back to the photo. You know, you can just, you know, and then you could also just scrape in one area. I do like this like dark, you know, the dark behind. And sometimes I feel like the photos, I mean, if you're doing people, because I know Carrie, you like to do people, right? Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah. So if there was like a person here, you might be a little bit more, you know, cautious about, you know, revealing them, right? Or making sure you're not cutting off their arm, right? So there's like maybe more considerations. And that's like sort of why I just don't want to do people anymore, is I don't want to be tied down to commitment or all of those sort of moral questions about, oh my God, I didn't reveal the whole face, or, oh, there's texture on the arm, or, oh, it looks like you know what I mean? There's like a lot of complications to working with the figure versus working with something botanical or abstract, right? Because to me, honestly, like I can go any, really, I have so much freedom of choice here about which direction I go, how much I reveal, or I could do like another layer of encaustic, right? I mean, I could just sort of have it all, free flow. And I feel like the wax just wants to be more cooperative, you know, in this arena. Okay, so I think that looks good. And what I do love about it too is that it is looks textured, but is flat. So I could do a couple things here. One is I could put another coat of wax medium on it, right? And what would that do for me? Does anybody know?
Make it more opaque.
Exactly. So which area do you think should go? Do you think there's an area that needs to go more opaque? Or it could also simply be, it could be about opacity, but it could also be about texture, right? So like here is a little bumpy, right? So I could definitely put some there if I don't want bumpy, right? So, and I could go like this, right? I mean, I could put some here. I could do long strokes. I could also put some, you know, here. So it's kind of like taking like a little, it's like, now it's taken like a little pause in those areas, right? And kind of quieted them down. But what did that do too? It brought your eye more to where? It let this spot, right? Yeah. Like what I call like the sweet spot, right? So it's kind of like the wax medium is almost like squashing your competition, right?
Yep. So are all those colors paint sticks and not pigment that you have on there right now?
These are the opposite. They're exactly the opposite. They're all pigmented sticks.
Okay.
Yeah, they're all encaustic paints and not, oh wait, am I confusing you? They're all these guys. Encaustic paints, they're not pigment sticks.
Okay.
Is that?
Yeah, those are the ones that you melt, right?
These are the ones I melt, yeah.
Yeah.
With the wax. Yep. This is all encaustic. And I did cheat a little bit though. I don't know if you noticed, but my white means I'd have to get off my stool and walk over there. So what did I added you can add this.
Okay.
Okay, I was wondering that. If you have a color of a pigment stick, but you don't have encaustic paint, that color, you can mix.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So yes. Yep. So I had like a little bit of this color. Like, remember how I made this? I did this.
Yeah.
And then I did this. Oh, wait, sorry. And then I did this. Right?
Right.
And then I actually, hold on. I'm not trying to be skimpy here. I swear. I need a camera guy. Okay. And then I did this. Do you see that?
Yeah.
So technically I have both wax, right? Wax, encaustic paint, This is my medium. And then I could add, you know, just, and that's how I made that color. And this one looks a little bit lighter, right?
Yes.
Than the first time I made it, which could be nice. I could add this in, right? The thing about adding this is it's going to be opaque and it's going to have to be done well. So like, there's no reason why you can't use a smaller brush, you know, and like paint a, you know, take the wax and paint a flower, right? I mean, you could, right? Or some, you know, accents of a flower. I mean, right? You totally can do all different sizes of brushwork with this, right? Don't ever rule that out. I mean, that could be really nice. It just takes a little bit more time, you know, and patience, right? I think if I have a go-to, I'm a little bit more of a drawer than a painter. Do you know what I mean? So I would probably like do more detail work, like tracing the flowers, or I think it's just like drawing confidence in a way for me that I just feel more confident, like tracing something that's already there than free drawing. You know what I mean? I don't have a ton of self-confidence in my free drawing skills, you know, without a picture. So my inclination would be more to like, be like, oh, I'm going to draw, I would trace the outside edge, right? So it's like, I could take a tool, like here's the outside edge, and I could go around the outside of the flower, right? The inside, the petal, right? Or the stem, like draw the stems in, right? But I'm kind of like cheating off of my photograph, right? So that's more my, but this could be pretty, you know, like kind of, you know, and this is the incising. So this is like what we did earlier, where you're putting like the marks into the surface of the wax. And this is the end of a paintbrush. I mean, I could be using a razor blade. They sell like hot tools for this. I've never thought, honestly, that you needed like a big expensive tool to kind of like dig into the wax. I feel like the wax is so vulnerable that it really doesn't need, you know, something expensive to like, you know, market, you know. But I mean, you can experiment with whatever. And I kind of actually like these cheap, this is funny. This is actually like a slanted. Do you see how the end of the brush is slanted?
Yeah.
I think it's kind of fun. I don't know. It's just always sort of like worked for me as like a little mark. And you could do like, again, like playing around with scale is definitely a good thing, because I tend to like get everything like in a medium scale, and then it's like harder to sort of like balance. But if you do end up going like smaller and doing like nice small design work in one area, it can be really nice, you know, and refreshing for the eye, that it's kind of like something small and something big, to, you know, kind of together. And so I'm just literally like flicking this out right now. All right, so, and I won't really see the magnitude of any of that mark making until I put the pigment sticks in, right? And I can just kind of rub the surface. And if you just rub the surface, you can just sort of take down the severity of any of the lines. You just pick out the extra little waxy parts. I mean, there are some artists that would actually even, and this is something I've done, this is crazy, but one point I was actually projecting images. I could also, this is interesting too, I could also trace on this surface, right? So for example, I use that stencil up here and I kind of like lost it, right? Because I fused it and then I put wax medium on it, right? So I'm just gonna make, now I can kind of bring it, I could bring it back a hair. But look at this too as a technique, is like I could actually like trace something on the surface too if I wanted a little bit more detail. I just can't figure out which direction I want it. So I can lay this down. I would probably want to use, this is what I like to use, is a knitting needle. So like, you remember how I was like, look how cute these little like, so I just can kind of go, I could literally like trace the stencil, right? So you could project an image on this surface and trace it. Like you could cut, you know, you could use any type of design. You could cut a piece of lace. Like you could trace something bigger, like more abstract. You could trace like the outside of a cup, right? Just have some circles on here. So you really need to start thinking about all the possibilities of these surfaces that you're creating, right? And you're compounding these layers so that your viewers looking at all of these layers as one piece, right? So why not make these layers exciting? Like what else could you give them? You know what I mean? I can show you an example sort of what I'm talking about. There was an artist in my, so here's some of the tracing, right? But you can't really see them yet, right? Because they're, so let's show them off. Let's show off the tracing. So I'm going to use a dark color, right? Because they're outside edge. So here's like the gray. Here's the gray pigment stick, right? And it's kind of hard to get it to go into those spaces. We talked about that earlier. So I'm going to use a little bit more of the,
Do you know what that blending medium is made out of? This is kind of a weird question.
it's wax and oil.
Okay.
So I wish I could read it to you, but there is no verbiage on my stick left, but we can look it up. It'll say on the RNF.
I can look at it, I think.
Yeah.
Do you think it's on the...
Yeah, I think it's just oil, like linseed oil probably, and beeswax. All right, so here's the right, and then like we can decide. Like I can look at it, I can decide, is that help, you know, are those lines helping or hurting, right? You know, I mean, I don't know, they're kind of just like there. I mean, they're interesting. I don't know if I love them. They're a little bit hard-ish for me. Like so how would I soften them?
More wax or another color pigment.
Yeah. Yep. So I could fuse them. I could wax them, right? Or I could just tap them down with the razor blade. Right? Sometimes too, I think like, you know, that's why I work on more than one piece at a time too, is like sometimes I think you just get like sucked into a piece and you get very kind of like determined and you're like, oh, I really want this to work. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try that. I'm going to try this. Right. So you almost go like, you start to like almost provoke it in a way. You know what I mean? Like over agitate it. Where it might have been like really good in it like a few choices ago. Right. But look, if I just take this back a little bit, I'm going to like it more. Okay. So at some point, I'm going to have to sort of put the highlights back in here because right now it all just looks kind of like mud, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, right. So it all, even though this is dark, it just looks like, but I do really like the way I like the way I kind of painted in with that little brush. That was I did really like painting with this little brush. I'd say more than I liked tracing that stencil. Remember this little guy?
Yeah.
So I really did actually kind of like that. So let's see if I do a little bit more of that because this is kind of floral. That was kind of nice. And where else could I put it? Like over here. And then sometimes you end up like sort of making up more than there was in the you know, the original piece. But remember, this was like nothing. This was like empty space over here. So I could do whatever I wanted. I mean, I could paint like a ton of flowers over here. And again, this is kind of one tone. So maybe if I go down here, you know, and I shade it a little bit, that could be helpful. And I think what's happening to this painting now is that I only have like one big thing right here and then everything else is small. Maybe I need another big thing. Right? So I'm kind of looking at the composition. What do you guys think? It's very small and broken up over here and big over here.
Yep.
So I'm not really loving all this small, but I feel like this part is good.
Mm-hmm.
So this happens a lot for me, is like, you know, like this part is good. Right?
So then what do you do with the other part that you don't like as much?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I can do a couple things. One, I could say, okay, I really went too far and I could go back. The other thing is I think it's now just like too bright and like not in a good way. So I could go dark again. Right? And I know how to make that color, right? So that's why it was helpful that I sort of like kept track of how I made that color.
Mm-hmm.
I think I should go dark again. What do you guys think?
Would you just go dark in the area to the top left that you don't
I would just quiet. Yeah, I would just like make, because when you go dark, like if you burn, so like I do a lot of retouching in photography. And if something's like catching my eye that outside of my subject matter, I'm going to just burn it down. I'm going to make it go back or dark to take keep the eye in the subject, you know? So like, this is like my happy place. So another thing I used to do, or I did like last summer, was I made these handmade stencils. And this is called a masking layer. So I basically took paper and I kind of figured out like where my sweet spot is. And honestly, I don't know about you guys, but I kind of feel like my sweet spot, and this is rare for me because I say most of my sweet spots are circular or oval. It could be an oval. Let's just say it's an oval. So I take paper and I'm just going to tear it because I don't know why. I just don't want to leave my stool right now. Okay. So, I don't know. I'm just, you know what? It's kind of, I feel like one of those animals that when it's cold, it just won't move. Like, is that a bear? What is that? Is that a bear? It's like, it's cold. I'm not moving. Okay. So look how my shape turned out. So I actually, right? Do you see what's happening?
Mm-hmm.
So I made a window to what I think is pretty. And I totally think this is pretty. Okay. So the rest of the painting needs to go. So here's what I'm going to do is I could move the window around, right? It could be up or it could be down a little bit. So this is what's going to happen, right? So I'm going to take this, I'm going to put this here. And then I'm going to paint around the outside of this with a translucent glaze. Okay. So I'm going to protect this. Now, if I really want to do this properly, I should probably get like some masking tape. And now I just have to be careful what color I use to do this. Now the tape could be fun. It could add a little like, you know what I mean? It could add like a little, you know, like could add a little, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I'm trying to get like, it could be like another kind of like we did. Remember how we did like the spackling, make that cool texture? You kind of go, you know, I don't know. Did any of you in like middle school or camp make like make a cup with masking tape over it and shoe polish?
Yes.
Who did that?
I did that.
Do you remember that? Where you just like layered
it for like a Father's Day gift or something.
Yeah, you layered the tape all around the outside of the cup, and then you put paint on it, and it looked like it was like made out of like individual pieces of clay or something.
Yeah, I think we made that for a Father's Day gift.
Oh my god, it's so fun.
Smells like shoe polish.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so segue, but this, you know, everything, like we're cumulative beings. Like all of our experiences are accumulated in our tissues and our muscles and our memory, right? So, and I mean, this is like not pretty right now, but I mean, if this was like pretty painted, I could kind of like the texture, you know. It looks a little bit too much like a peanut, I think is what
I was just gonna say the same thing.
I mean, I'm just totally thinking Jimmy Carter, like big time. Jimmy
Planters peanuts.
Oh my god, we just started. It's been like peanut week. We made like pad thai, so I was like eating peanut. All right, it's looking less like a peanut now. Okay, good. All right, so let's pick the color. Okay, so we could explore. We could go gray, yellow, which could be cool. But we're definitely going to use colors we've already used, right? Because we're trying to stick in the 3-color formula.
Mm-hmm.
So we could use that. We could warm it up a little bit by using this color. I just don't like gray like that. It's too, that's like, it's like mean. It's like making me feel cold. And we could warm it up a little bit more. And then I always like it too dark. So this is what, what do you think? I think it's too flat.
Yeah.
So the green in it. Let's put more red in it. Oh, that's getting better. And more, oh yeah, see, I'm gonna wanna go to this is my happy place, is like red, brown, and off-white. That's like my happy place. All right, well, yeah, what if we do that? Oh, we could do that. That's better. Is that better? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Let's try. All right, and then we can make it a little bit more translucent. All right, we want it to be pretty translucent, so I'm gonna add a lot of wax medium. Now, of course, I should have lifted my palette too because it's sliding away. All right, so that's a pretty color. And we can always test it on white to see if so I can tell when I tested it, it definitely looks like milk chocolate, which is nice, I guess. But it's very opaque, right? So I need it way more translucent. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go with this brush that's in the wax medium, and I'm just gonna go a little bit in the paint. So that should solve my problem, right? Okay, yeah. And then I'm just gonna start going, oh, that's better, yeah. So this is kind of giving me like that quietness, right? And again, I can leave spaces, right? Because like broken line, you know, I could lighten it a little bit. I could lighten it a little bit for like an area. And I could darken it a little bit. Wow, that really looks blue. That's really blue. I could darken it a little bit. Oh, but these two colors are very pretty together. Back to blue and brown. Woohoo! Blue and brown. Always works, right? Blue and brown. Hello. Okay, so that was helpful, right? Okay. So that was pretty. I like it. And now we get our pretty spot back. And we don't have a peanut. Perfect peanut, which is good. We like peanuts, but not perfect ones. So again, like handmade stencils are fun. Masking layers are always fun. And I think too, like, oh, that's cool. Oh, it looks cool. I like the tape. I mean, I like how the little tapey edges. Now, look what happened here. So what the heck happened there? I don't know, but I think I'm gonna leave it. It's like the paper came off.
Can you hold it closer so we can see it?
Yeah, hold on. I'm trying to, yeah, it's like the paper.
Did it did it go all the way down?
It's like the paper came apart. It's like the paper.
Oh.
See what I mean? But I think I can get it out of there. It's like the wax, like when I lifted it, I should have like, cause this wax was heavy. It pulled the paper apart. So really what I'm interested in here, I mean, I'll deal with the paper thing, but is that sort of like, how would you describe it? Like the two worlds of sort of like, you know, more photorealistic, right? And more out of focus, right? Focus and out of focus, right? And yet there's kind of like interesting stuff under there, but you can't really tell what it is. So it's not distracting because it's not. Oh, I think I got it. Oh, look, it's really under there. Oh, okay, I see. That's cool. I'm going to leave it. I like it. Okay, note to self. Thicker paper or thinner paper. You know what paper works really well for me? I usually use newsprint. This is journal paper, and no to the journal paper. But okay, so I think I'm getting close. So I'm going to do my steps again, right? What are my steps? My neurotic steps. What are my neurotic steps? Fuse and what? I do it every time. Fuse and what? Fuse. Now this is like really, there's lots of really pretty areas to this now. Like this translucent glaze over that little flower that I painted, right? Which is kind of like cascading down to the photo. The little lines are cute. Like the little lines right here are really cute. You can't really see them, right? Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like this is ugly, right? Like this.
Yeah.
It's ugly, but it just needs, it's fine. It's better than the peanut, right? So it just, but it needs to be fused and scraped, right? To be pretty. But like, look how pretty this is, like where the translucent glaze made, you know, like this, you know, like what, it's so cool. It's like looking through a bubble at those flowers, right? Okay. So let me do my thing, right? So I'm going to do the fuse and the scrape back. And I'm going to scrape back, not really to change anything that dramatically, but to what? What's the fuse? What's the scraping going to be this time? To do what?
Take down those edges that you don't like.
Yeah, blending, right? So it's kind of like blending, right? It's just. Yep. All right, so I'm going to do torch, and I'm going to do from I'm going to do fairly far away, right? Because I don't want to lose what I've got, but I just have to, okay, so, and you can go as slow as you want with, like, you don't have to go fast. Oh my God, but so much better already, right? And maybe I don't even have to scrape. Maybe I shouldn't scrape, you know? Like there's no have to's in this, right? Except for maybe fusing every once in a while. So that looks so much better. Don't you think?
Yeah.
So the only thing I don't love is like, this kind of looks like a chin and this looks like an ear, right? So I'm just like, right? So it's like a little bit too much like a little like toy face. So that's what I'm going to focus on. Just kind of blending that, right? That's my goal. So sometimes you might really have a goal, you know, and sometimes you might not. So let's just review too what we kind of did tonight. We did, we had wax medium and a dark encaustic layer. Then we did a light encaustic layer, right?
Right.
Then we did we kind of talked about and played around with painting encaustic with a smaller brush, right? Which can be really fun, right? So any place that you kind of have like detail, like if you had a fence or a tree, or if you had a dress, like a woman's dress, you could put little fine, you know, you could kind of collar, right? Sleeves, you know, you could kind of give some attention to it with the small brush and encaustic paint. We used the gradient, the kind of the light and the darks. Then we decided that we kind of, and then we drew into the stencil and we drew into the wax. So we did a little bit of incising. We also used the wax as a sculptural element, right? With the palette knife.
Right.
Then we did, then we decided that it got like too busy, right? So we left all of that busy work there and we did a translucent glaze. So it wasn't, you know, it didn't feel right in a weird way to like take away all that work I did, right? But it was just too loud, you know, whatever, loud or demanding, like whatever negative, you know. And then like here too, when I'm scraping, I'm kind of looking to like get rid of these like rectangular shapes. I'm just breaking down and blending the lines, right? So I'm kind of focused on just blending the lines, right? So I kind of got rid of that line. All right. And I think it looks pretty good. I mean, as far as like the waxing goes, oh wait, I got to fix this. So this looks weird. This is where the paper was. I'm just going to scrape it a little bit. Go ahead.
Oh, do you ever, even though you have a certain viewpoint or orientation for the piece, do you ever turn it another way to look at it to see if something's out of sync?
Absolutely. I turn them all the time. I kind of have been playing with this. I mean, this is the only way this can go for me now, because it's definitely like falling this way. I still feel though that it's like it's gonna need something over here. So I have to still figure. So I haven't figured it out yet, but I will. And I think it's gonna need. It either needs. I still think it needs like something big.
Do you ever take, just with your phone, like take a picture of your work, like as you're working in process, just to look at it? I find sometimes when I'm painting and working on pieces, it makes me see areas that I don't see when I'm working on it.
Absolutely. I do that all the time. And actually what I'll like, because I feel that like I'm not 100% with it right this second, I know I'm tired and I know it's late and I don't want to do like, it's like perfect time to be like, okay, take it. Like, so that like, it's kind of like the more you care, the slower you go.
Okay.
It's like the more patience you have with it, you know, like, because I really do love it. And I think that it has a lot of potential. Like what's good is really good. But a lot is not working out yet. So I'm definitely going to do exactly what you said, which is take a picture of it and walk away.
Okay.
You know, and that's also why I try to work on like 2 to 3 at a time, because I've painted this photo. I know this photo works for me. I changed the composition of the photo by adding this other section here. So if I showed you the photo, there's another flower. There's like another flower here, but it's not here because I made a collage out of it, right? So part of me maybe is like, maybe it's my memory that's affecting me. I mean, I could try to rotate it, but I still feel, I mean, no, I don't like it any other way.
And I wasn't meaning to rotate it to hang it differently, but just to see what's not in balance, maybe, you know?
Well, I still feel like it needs, even like this, I still feel like it needs something, right? Do you guys agree?
Yeah.
Yep.
So, but let's leave it. This is like a perfect place to stop, and let's leave it. And I will photograph it, and let's start here. But I also love starting with you guys, you know, you're working at home and questions you're having. I would love, like even on those pieces, Jen, you're working on, I would love to see you do like a heavier encaustic layer and then go back to the, like I think that it's fine to just go lightly over the photo with encaustic, but it's like, it's kind of like once you go heavy, it's like you realize, you know, how much more you can integrate the two layers.
Yeah, I agree.
You kind of get it into that more, it's just, you take the relationship deep, right? The more, and it's challenging and scary, but I think that you'll like it. And you could go dark color if everybody wanted to try painting a dark encaustic color over their photo. Definitely do the wax medium first though, right? Because you don't want to stain the photo.
Okay.
So you have to do wax medium, right? And then the encaustic paint on top.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
And then fuse it and scrape back to the photo. And then if you want, you can try what we did next, which was add what we just did tonight, which is add the light color. I think what's going to happen is I'm going to end up probably trying to use a stencil and this is where I was saying that I wish I had the photo. I think I mentioned earlier how I was talking about like printmaking or that photo. I'm thinking about, because I want a flower here, but I don't necessarily want it made out of wax is what I'm trying to say. Right?
Yeah.
And so my options are either drawing it, painting it with wax, stenciling it with wax, or collaging something here. But I could, you know, take this photo, cut one of these flowers out and glue it, like try to glue it in here or embed it in here.
Can you glue it with the tight bond glue, or do you glue it with wax? How do you glue?
It depends what kind of paper it is. If it's tissue paper, I feel like you can glue it with the wax. I feel like if it's any other kind of paper, you're going to need a glue.
Okay.
Even the rice paper, I think is just a little bit too thick to actually inlay in there. I mean, without bolt sticking out. I mean, if sticking out, we could look at it. I think we could explore those possibilities next time. I mean, I'm not going to paint this one without you guys. This is our piece, but I think we should explore options. And I think we should talk about how to make these decisions. You know, and like you said, Celia, you know, one of the things you can do is kind of put it on here and take a picture, you know, put something else on here and take a picture. But it was kind of my gut that I needed something big here. Also, like I have to get out my you know, I don't think these little flowers are doing it. Even if they were bright white, I just don't think I just don't think they're doing it. Maybe though.
Do you have stencils of bigger flowers?
I do. They're not as pretty though, honestly. I think something about when they get like the stencils get a little bit more realistic. They just get also like a little bit more yeah, they're realistic, but they're more stencilistic. If that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Like they lose, but I can break them down to make them softer, but it takes more effort to make them not look like stencils.
Gotcha. How long do you on average spend on a piece? Even though you work a couple pieces at a time and you go back and forth?
You know, that's a really good question. And the sad truth is that a lot of my pieces are totally unsuccessful. So I work like say, so the only way I've ever figured out my numbers is that like if I probably have like 1 or 2 professional level shows a year, and the most pieces I've ever had at a show was like 30 something. Okay. And that's like working every day for a year. And then there's probably like an equal number of pieces that are going to be scraped. Like this Sunday, actually, my assistant and I are going to scrape back like 15 pieces that were unsuccessful. Oh. So, but it's fine because I'm going to keep the panels, you know, and, but you know, as people, we're constantly changing, and as artists, we're, you know, so it's like, it's okay. Like I could scrape back pieces because they haven't sold and they're really, you know, I just want the materials back. Like I want the panel, or my attitudes on them has changed. I just don't like them anymore. You know what I mean? So, but I'm pretty, yeah. So, you know, it's always still, even for me, like they just don't always work out. And sometimes you just get like, you give up. Like I have one that I've painted the same painting for a year, and I'm just, we're done. I'm over it. I'm giving up. I don't like it.
Anything technical about that process? I wonder if you should take pictures so we can see it next week.
Take pictures of what?
Scraping back. Just the scraping back process, or is it just heated up?
I take a heat gun and a paint scraper, and I just scrape all that wax off. And then I take a belt sander and I belt sand the photo, and then I start again.
Okay.
Is there any of the paper from the photo left on the wood, or you get all the way down to the wood?
I try to get all the way down to the wood before I start again, just so that I have a pure flat archival gluing surface.
Okay.
Unless there's something that I find or make through the process that is beautiful that I think I can like reuse.
Right.
That happens occasionally, but you know, I don't do this. Like I'll only do this like massive scraping back like once a year or every other year. It's not like all the time, because I do believe a lot of times like you hit a wall with a painting, and then you can leave it for a little while, and then you'll get the message, or you'll just come back to it on the right day and you'll just like know what to do. You know, some paintings go together perfectly from beginning to end. Hmm. They just they're always good, you know. And again, it has a little bit to do with you or me, and a little bit to do with the photo, you know, and then the steps you took. It's like everything matters, you know. Also, your vision. Is it meeting, like, you know, are they working together? Are your, you know, is your art technique and your vision working together?
Hmm. I appreciate your honesty and sharing that not everything works for you, and that there's times you even just give up on a piece.
I'll take a picture. I'll take a picture of the piece that I hate, and I've literally paint. I mean, I started it in March. It's been a year, and I've given it a year. I've put in probably at least 70 to 100 hours on that one painting.
Wow.
Wow.
You know, it's still bad. I mean, not every day, you know, like over the year. You know what I mean? Yeah. I haven't like you know, I also, like when I was a darkroom printer and a professional, you know, an artist, printer, photographer, I would limit myself to darkroom time. So basically I would say that anything after the 3rd hour, if I stayed and kept working, was going to go in the trash. Because I was exhausted, or it's just like too much of the same thing. So it's like, in a way, as the artist, it's like, even though you're compressed for time or you're on a deadline, I've never been one of those people who can just plow through. I have to like work a little bit. Like I'm much more like a hummingbird. I have to like work a little bit and leave it and go do something else and come back and work a little, you know, and leave it. Like this pace, like working on this once a week with you guys and really talking about it, like this is good. Like there's hope, you know, like I'm not going to make those mistakes or just go and do something and like hate it. Right. So it's like, it's problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
painting, this type of painting, this type of arts problems. So you're fixing one problem, but sometimes you're creating more problems. Right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, but it's fun. It's totally fun. And I will photograph the painting before I scrape it. And it knows exactly who I'm talking about because it's right behind me. And it knows I'm talking about it. All right, I'm going to go eat some dinner, you guys. I'm so tired. And I will see you. I'll send you the recording.
Okay.
Okay.
Have a good weekend, everyone. Bye.
Right, bye, you guys.
Bye.
It's great to see you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Send me questions.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.